So pages 166 to 167. Have your art books ready and a pencil, and be ready to flip back and forth. Okay. So the learning targets, I can collect information from multiple sources, take notes, and sort evidence into categories. I can follow a series of steps and use strategies to plan writing. I can quote or paraphrase information to avoid plagiarism. So, as you do now. So today's goal, now that we've read a model informative essay, which was back on page 164, from a text, let's write one of your own or our own. We'll start by gathering evidence from the literary text we've read in this workshop. Then we'll think about how the evidence might support our analysis. So, the prompt, choose two characters from either the lottery or the Hunger Games, or one character from each. Write an essay analyzing the characters' attitudes about their community's annual tradition. So let me just fix something real quick. So highlight transparent. So what I've decided to do is to do two characters from one. Okay, now they've already chosen Mr. Summers for you. I think that doing all three characters from the same will be the easiest with distance learning, instead of flipping back and forth. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So that's why I've highlighted Tessie and Old Man Warner. Now these upcoming pages, I'll show you using the Elmo. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so now the first one was done for you. Okay. Oh, let's unpack the prompt first. So this prompt is asking me to choose blank and then analyze blank. Okay. So fill that in first. For example, for me, I know this prompt is asking me to analyze two additional characters and then say why it's important. That's the analysis part. You can pick evidence and put a whole bunch of quotes in, but you need to analyze it. Okay. So the example they gave you down at the bottom, Mr. Summers, well, they did one of his. So you have character, text evidence, and then, of course, why is it important? So Mr. Summers is our first character from the lottery. I went with the lottery. We already did some work on this on page 153. So I felt we could pull, we talked about Tessie Hustingen already. Some of you may have done somebody else, but I know Tessie was a big one that we talked about. Some people did Mr. Summers. So we've already done some information, talked about why it's important. So we have to figure out how each of these characters feels about the lottery. Mr. Summers, the text evidence that shows us that he finds it enjoyable, that's the analysis that we'll come up to. Quote, the lottery was conducted by Mr. Summers, who had time and energy to devote to civic activities. Okay. Now that quote, and what they don't have in, what I want you to do is I would like you to write down what page that came from. So I'm going to put on a little Post-it note. That was on When You Look Back in the Story. That was page 136, paragraph 4. So make sure you have that down, okay, in case you need to reference that. This shows also that he always runs the lottery. Hello. Okay. Now what you'll have to do is find the second piece of evidence here. And how does that piece of evidence show how he feels about the lottery? Okay. Then once you're done with that, you all have 2 more characters. Now, the characters I'd like you to choose, so go ahead and fill these in. I'll write them on here. Is the second character is Tessie Hutchinson. We've talked about Tessie a ton. Okay, so make her your second character on page, and write down as well, and write this down at the top. Refer to page 153. Some of you have this work already done, so write that down. On page 153, and I'll show it in this book so I don't need to flip back and forth. You've already filled in, when you're doing the writing on 152 to 153, you've already talked about a character from the lottery and discussed about their feelings. Hello? Yeah, I know, right? It's great. So that it was one of the ones we were talking about. So it was either Old Man Warner or Tessie. Okay. And so we have it in here. Now this was Jack. We didn't go with Jack. I know we filled in below Tessie Hutchinson or Old Man Warner you chose. Okay. So the other one, of course, or Mr. Summers, is Old Man Warner. That's your third character. Okay. So on this side, page 167, take notes in this chart to gather ideas and details for your essay. You will need 2 separate pieces of evidence about Tessie, exact quotes, dialogue, something the author wrote. It has to be in quotes. You could paraphrase it if you want, but definitely mark down the details. So let me restate that. I did direct quotes, but you can't paraphrase. Okay. So detail 1, or I should say evidence. Evidence 1 and a second piece of evidence. Over here, it says text analysis. So once you get the first piece of evidence down, for example, like, remember she started complaining, I have done, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. Remember she was yelling that? That's one of mine. So if that's when you want to choose, go ahead and use it. Find the page it was on, write that down, what paragraph it was on. And then over here, why is it important? You know, how does that show how she feels? Then find a second piece. And then once you're done with Tessie, you do the same for Old Man Warner. Find 2 separate pieces of evidence, or select 2 separate, that show how the Old Man Warner feels about the lottery. And then, of course, for each, how does it show? Why is it important? How does that show how Mr. Warner feels? Okay, once you've done that, then we'll be kind of cruising to where we can fill the information in into an organizer where you'll just type it out. Okay.